So, we are very busy people. Very busy. In the course of any day, as a Chief Compliance and Ethics Officer, there is all kinds of things that we need to take care of. You got the CEO you're reporting to, you're getting ready for the board level reporting every single quarter, you got all kinds of investigations going on. It seems like there's no time to stop and back up and kind of take a look at what's going on in the marketplace. And that is something that's very important if you want to look at your career, if you want to move your company forward as well. And fortunately, we have people like our next speaker, RENEE Murphy with Forrester. And she is one of the, been with Forrester for 4 years now as a principal analyst. And she speaks to hundreds of customers every single day, every single year, to find out what's going out in the market. If you've read research from Forrester on ethics and compliance, I guarantee you that RENEE co-authored it or she authored it. She's one of the leading experts in this field of ethics and compliance for Forrester. Prior to Forrester, she worked for 18 years as an IT person. And she shared with me as well that she's a self-described national parks nerd. I don't even know what that is. She said her favorite national park, I asked her, is Yellowstone. So she just loves Yellowstone Park, and that's great, because to me and to Converge17, she's one of our favorite analysts. So please welcome RENEE Murphy.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Well, hi, everybody. I'm really excited. Yes, thank you. Hi. I'm actually really excited to be here to talk about this stuff. I usually get to talk about risk management, and that's all fun, but you know, this will be a good time. I'm going to talk about corporate social responsibility, but I do it with brand-ageddon. Do you know brand-ageddon? It's when your brand gets killed by a competitor, your customers, the President of the United States. Really doesn't matter. Right? You're going to get hammered, and you need to protect the brand. But listen, we all have a duty in this, right? We all have to protect the brand some way. Compliance people are protecting the brand. They're protecting it from regulatory fines and embarrassment, right? You know, we have people in finance. They're protecting the brand by not letting us spend too much money so we're not here next year. The way we do our social media platforms, you're protecting, or at least you should be, protecting the brand, right? We do this through governance, risk, and compliance. But winter is coming. Y'all Game of Thrones fans? Yeah? My husband gave me a title, a mother of pugs. It's a really long one, but the end of it is mother of pugs. And pugs are like dragons, it works. So, but I want to tell you something. Winter is coming, and it's coming for the auditors. I really thought we had more time, right? I really did. I thought we had, you know, I'm a former IT auditor. I'm a network engineer, VP of data center operations, and an internal and external auditor. But I feel like our days as auditors are numbered. Platforms are getting smart. Big data is sucking up everything. Analytics is telling me whether or not it matters to me personally or to the organization overall. And using all of that data to do predictive analytics, we're able to figure out, is this a mistake we're going to make in the future? The way we do that is controls management and automated control testing. So if you're an audit, who are my auditors? Any auditors? Oh, okay. Find me later. Winter's coming, right? I hope you guys have boots. But here's the thing. Sooner or later, audit will be gone. Compliance will be relying on transactional-based stuff. And before you think I'm crazy and that this is nuts and why would KPMG like eat its own, you know, to get this done, yeah, they're gonna. They're gonna. They don't really see what they do as being totally valuable, right? Like, what is the external audit really good for? I don't know, telling people they could invest in your company because you're not totally corrupt. All right, that's awesome. Is it doing anything for your organization? Probably not. What's internal audit doing? I don't know. Compliance professionals last year, they actually went to CEOs and said, last year they went to the CEO and said, you know, how much do you trust or value your compliance people? And the number was 54% came back and said, we absolutely think they're awesome. This year, 44%. We dropped by 10% this year. Why? Well, part of the reason why is because audit can't audit fast enough, which means we can't get the information about what our current risk strategy is, so we don't know what to do with our future risk strategy. So how is any of this going to happen? It's going to happen through technology, right? So it's coming. I think my auditors, because you guys are right here, honestly, I think we're probably about 2.5 years before I actually see that use case. But, and that use case is automated testing of every control that we have, so continual monitoring is all we do. What is audit going to do, right? Audit's going to care about the brand, because that's all anybody cares about. So, do ethics harm the brand? Bad ethics does, sure. Want to go through the Ethical Failure Hall of Fame? It'll be fun. This is how I have a good time, to be honest with you. Unethical sales practices. Right now I'm trying to get a mortgage, and my loan officer is going nuts, because I'm like, I don't care what Wells Fargo's offering me. I don't want it. Like, I'll pay another point. I don't want them, right? Because then I'm going to have car insurance and maybe a credit card and possibly life insurance. I don't know what else they're going to sign me up for, but I don't want it, right? But don't worry about it. They sorted it out. They fired the 5,000 employees that did it, and now everything's fixed. They have a long ways to go, and they have a long way to go. But do you remember right after this happened, the first advertisings I saw was, we know we screwed up, and we want your trust back. Yeah, I don't know, give me $50,000, we'll talk, right? I mean, that's them. Questionable ethics, Foxconn. Do you guys remember this? Foxconn, there were complaints that people were committing suicide. You know, they would end their shift and think, I can't go into that dorm for 1 more minute, so they go to the top floor, they went onto the roof, and they jumped. And Apple called them and said, you gotta stop this. What is going on? You gotta stop. And they said, okay, we got it. You know, Tim Cook, sleep easy tonight. We are on it. And they put up nets. That way, when you jumped, you wouldn't hit the ground. Well, okay, then Tim Cook said, I can see why you think that's good, but no, I'm gonna come over there. He got on the next plane out, and he went over there and said, you're gonna fix this. We can't have people working 100 hours a week. We can't have you taking all their money. They can't make almost nothing. You gotta fix this, or you're not our manufacturer anymore, right? Foxconn fixed it. All right, so I had to write this one down. There's a lot. So, okay, let's start with Uber's core beliefs. This is what they believe as an organization. You are graded on this if you work at Uber, okay. Super pumpness. Always be hustling. I think I know what that means, actually. Let builders build. All that's saying is make your developers like a rogue bunch of maniacs. That's really all that means. Principled confrontation. This is a core belief of this organization. Principled confrontation. I turned that into ego-driven shouting match because I think that's probably what it really is. Make bold bets. Celebrate cities. Inside out. I don't know what that means, so I looked it up, and it means the best idea wins. I don't know why that's inside out. I don't know. Optimistic leadership. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh at that one. Own, don't rent. Champion mindset. No toe stepping, because now that you created this rogue workforce of jerks, you don't want them taking your job. Customer obsession. And let me tell you, I'm not sure Uber actually knows who their customers are. Their customers are their drivers. It's not me. I'm a customer of that driver. That driver is the customer of Uber. I mean, Uber's made that clear. They're not employees, right? They've said it a number of times. They're not employees, they're customers. But they don't quite realize that, and they treat them pretty badly. Oh, number 13, smash everyone. Number 14, make magic. And number 15, be yourself. As long as yourself is an absolute jerk, right? If that's you, then you're set. So what kind of corporate environment did this bring us? Wait, there's another page. They hacked both their competitors and their partners to see what their security weaknesses were. Hacked them. Hacked them. The CEO got into a screaming match with a driver, and the driver had it all on tape, so that was hilarious. You should go YouTube that. Grayball. This was an actual tool inside the organization that would tell drivers when a cop was near, so that they knew not to pick someone up, because then they would get a fine. So they had this whole software that tells you, where the cops are so that you know what you can and can't do. And legal approved that, just so we're clear. Legal was okay with that, right? So that's good. They continued to track your location data even after you deleted your Uber account. So if you made a stand and said, I don't like their ethics, I'm not going there anymore, didn't matter, they were still tracking you. Oh, and then they created some extra software to make sure Apple wouldn't find out they were still tracking you. They were sued by Google for stealing IP for self-driving cars, and they were kicked out of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh? I mean, what do you have to do to get kicked out of, and I mean this as a Pittsburgher, I mean, honestly, what do you have to do to get kicked out of Pittsburgh? Well, apparently this is all you had to do to Bill. When it came to what Uber wanted, Pittsburgh delivered. But when it came to our version of how this industry could enhance people, planet, and place, that message fell on deaf ears. That's what a business partner of Uber had to say about them. They didn't care about anything but themselves. We should have known that. It seemed like their culture. But Pittsburgh, who decided, yeah, we want self-driving cars. And Uber promised us they wouldn't charge anybody, and they would give us the data, and they would tell us how to build roads so we could become one of those cities where this will work. No, none of that actually happened. And so now Uber got kicked out. So not to belabor it, but they're unethical, period. Safety failure. BP had a lot of problems, right? Texas City oil refinery was a problem. Alaska, they actually dropped drilling fluid all around. California, notorious for air quality problems. In all fairness, we have very strict air quality in California, so if you don't take care of that, we do track you down. And then the Gulf of Mexico with the Deepwater Horizon. You remember Deepwater Horizon, right? We watched that pipe for like months just spewing that crap into the ocean. I still don't know how big that pipe is either. Can't tell if it's like this big or like this big. I can't tell. Clearly it was bad though. They put aside $42 billion in order to manage that crisis. They thought that was going to be enough. Except that a bad reputation equals a whole lot of money. 40% more to drill a well. 16% when they could get credit. For the first month, they couldn't get any credit at all. And when they did, it was 16%. Want to know what Volkswagen was paying before it got caught? 0.25. 16%, just because they have a bad reputation, right? 30% more to hire or retain employees. So if people quit because they didn't like what you were doing, it cost you 30% more to hire them. I have it on good authority from someone at BP who was in their risk management program that they were about 6 weeks away from insolvency. They went from being one of the largest oil companies in the world to almost insolvent in 6 weeks. $250 billion was the total impact of that to that company. Now, there are not many organizations that can take that kind of impact. Clearly, oil and gas might not have a big problem with it. But that mistake, which I just want to say one more time, was a third-party mistake, really, really hurt them. Volkswagen, it's my favorite, right? I have this theory, I call it the Lance Armstrong theory. You'll get away with anything for 7 years, and then it all blows up, right? So they got away with it for 7 years, right? They admitted 10 to 40 times the legal limit when they were tested during normal driving conditions. 40 times the legal limit of pollution was going into the environment in clean diesel, right? The EPA fines in the United States are $37,500 per car. I think there were 250,000 of them, right? Oh no, 482,000 were sold in the US and $18 billion just in EPA fines. But what I love about Volkswagen in the end is that they're too big to fail. 400,000 people in Germany are employed by the car industry, right? And there's only a couple of car industries there. They're too big to fail. Now, they got beat up for it. It's ugly. There's people who have bumper stickers now saying, "Don't hate me because it's DTI." Right? Like, don't hate me because I bought diesel. One woman said she felt like she's now driving around in a Superfund site. It's pretty awful, right? Like, her car is a Superfund site. But that's the kind of hit that reputation took, right? And they're still taking it. They actually had if you saw the corporate headquarters on the wall, they had 7 years straight of cleanest company awards. they made the cleanest car. And in my mind, I had these people showing up from that place with a trash can and just taking it off the wall and throw it in a trash can, right in front of the receptionist, because no one else would come, right? But they're going to do it, right? In my mind, that's how it should have gone. But they took them all away. They said, you can either send them back to us or we're going to come get them, but you don't get to say that's who you are. You know, that's not who you are. It's a broken brand promise. We're clean and we care about the environment. You clearly don't. And 48,000 cars later, you figure that out. And this was systemic damage to the entire German auto industry. As a matter of fact, it was so bad from an ethics and compliance perspective that Mercedes-Benz said to Volkswagen, we're sending you our ethics officer. She's going to quit working here, and she's going to come work for you because you have absolutely no credibility with any regulator around the world, and we need her, or you're going to go under. And we can't afford for you to go under, so guess what? You get her for 2 years, you pay her salary, give her back when you're done, and quit doing this crap, or you're going to kill us all, right? That was the conversation they had within that industry to get them in line. And Mercedes-Benz, it was so crazy to them because they have diesel cars too. They actually said diesel was the way of the future. They weren't going to build electric cars. They didn't care. People who can afford a Benz can afford gas. That's how they said it to me, too. Are you ever going to build electric? No, why? But this is enough, right? And corporate social responsibility risk is growing. We asked a bunch of people, please rate your concern for the following types of risk and potential impact they would have on your organization. And this is corporate social responsibility and environmental sustainability list. And we're seeing 46% say that's going to be bad for them if they don't sort that out. Please rate your concern for each of the following types of risk and potential impact they could have on your organization. Same thing, we're seeing it grow, just for enterprises, right? And it's actually growing faster. So I can look at a department and say, are you doing good by corporate social responsibility? Sure, but how's the whole enterprise doing? They actually care and they track it. And it's growing everywhere. North America, Europe, Latin America, Asia Pacific, it's on its way up everywhere. Which is interesting, right? Because right now we're sitting in a position by where we are essentially living in a world where regulations are being pulled back, environmental stuff is being pulled back, everything, and we're thinking industry's just going to follow suit. They're not. You know, they're talking about rolling back Dodd-Frank. When I talk to people in banking, they're like, we don't care, we're still going to do it. Doesn't matter if you roll it back. We integrated it into the way we work, we're keeping it. There's ethical thought going on in organizations, right? And it doesn't matter what the government's doing with it, they stick with it, right? Rise of the informed consumer, what we're seeing is I regularly purchase organic or natural products, 32% versus 29%. I consider myself to be environmentally conscious, 52 versus 46, and my health and wellness are priorities to me. This is what people care about when they go and buy. Those are ethical things. Health, environment, organic. Those are all things that they look at as being important. How strongly do you agree, if at all, with the following statements? It's okay for a company to track my activities across multiple devices, send me more relevant ads. 65% of the people disagree. It is not okay for companies to do that. We do it anyway. We in the United States love this. We love marketing data, right? Ask Equifax. I think it's unethical for brands. Sorry. It's snarky and it just slips out. I think it's unethical for brands to disguise their advertisements as media content. 51% say they agree. And when I find out media content, online print articles, videos, or all that, are sponsored by a brand, I trust it less? Not really. They're kind of all like, say, if I don't trust you, I don't trust you. There's no real pull on any of that. So they may not like it that you're tracking their data, but they don't mind if you misrepresent yourself in articles. Ethical failures actually impact reputation. And it does it like this. You have a brand promise, and you have a brand experience. The brand promise is, our cars are clean. The brand experience is, they're 40 times dirtier than they're allowed to be. That's a huge disconnect, right? I sell outerwear. I'm Patagonia. I sell outerwear, and I gave $10 million to the federal government for their climate change study. Yeah. That's a brand promise that's aligned with ethics. You ask any millennial, who do you trust more on the environment? Scott Pruitt or Patagonia? Right? It's Patagonia. They put $10 million toward climate change, and Scott Pruitt doesn't believe in it. So a resilient brand makes sure those two things overlap. So when something does go wrong, it's not going to impact you really badly. When they're separate from each other and they're not really paying attention to how that experience is not matching up with that promise, well, then they are a vulnerable brand. I used to say Facebook was like the least vulnerable brand of any brand out there because all the data they had was given to you by you, right? And you agreed that it's not private, so they can't be breached. It's public data, right? I always thought that was, and then the election happened, right? And now I think like maybe that's how it ends for Facebook, right? Like you were in cahoots with the Russians, huh? Yeah, I don't know how that's going to go, but I always felt like that brand promise and that brand experience were literally the same thing. That never disconnected for Facebook, and it made them really, really, really resilient, right? I think the other interesting one is Monsanto. They don't have a good reputation, but for some reason no one cares. And so that's one of those ones where you think, well, that's terribly resilient. And I'm not sure why. All incidents have impacts. Do you remember when Netflix was breached? It was actually a bunch of shows, and one was Orange is the New Black. It was actually released about a month before the drop to Netflix. And I remember writing a blog post for it saying, does it really matter? Who cares? I mean, so I'm not going to run and cancel my subscription to Netflix because I'm going to see something, with timestamps on it a month earlier. Like, that's not how any of that works. A subscription base protects them from that. And it was ransomware. So this hacker was saying to them, give us this back or we're going to drop this. Give us $60,000 or we're going to drop this and you're going to be out your series, right? And I remember writing the blog to say, if Netflix actually pays that $60,000, that is the only financial impact this thing is going to have. So why would you even pay it, right? It had an impact, but if you did the risk analysis on that, regulatory impact, none. Financial impact, none, unless you pay that hacker, you got none, right? Like, is this a big deal for them? No. But I remember when it happened, it was huge. Is this the second biggest hack since Sony? Well, Sony's was more fun. I had a way better time with that one. Volkswagen, the impact of Volkswagen ended up being financial, definitely, right? But they were too big to fail. BP, reputational risk, yeah, they were always known for taking a lot of risk and not really caring about safety. That was kind of their thing. Although when you talk to them now, they call it the Macondo well incident. They won't call it Deepwater Horizon, they call it the Macondo well incident. And they claim they've learned a lot from it. And I think what they've learned is when stuff like that breaks that far down, you can't do anything about it. But they say they're going to put that to work, so yay. Equifax. So you guys know you're not Equifax customers, right? You know they don't care at all about you. You're the data. You're not the customer. Banks, employers, and soon to be utilities who want to decide, because you have no credit, whether or not they want to turn your lights on. These are the people who use this data. Interestingly enough, right before this breach happened, the Social Security Administration plopped down $10 million in an agreement with Equifax in order to check to see if people were actually committing Social Security fraud. I'm sorry. So 140 million Social Security numbers are now out in the wild, and we're going to pay these people $10 million to make sure that they're good. Right? That's what happened with all of that, right? So when you think about who the customers are of Equifax, it's banks, it's the federal government. It is not you and I. Knowing that now, what is the real risk to Equifax? Right now, the big banks are saying, do we really need them? Do we really need this industry at all? Blockchain is going to give us something very different. It's going to give us total transparency in the market. Do we really need collection points like this? No. We don't. So what is going to happen to this industry? I don't know. I think they're going to be forced out in 7 years anyway because the technology is going to take them over. And eventually we're going to get aggravated by the fact that you're allowed to take all my data without me actually telling you anything, use it for whatever purposes you're using it for, and then not secure it appropriately. And then don't tell anybody anything. Because if you thought the reaction to all of us was bad, like they didn't care about us, yeah, it was just as bad for their customers. Those banks hadn't heard from them. They didn't know what was going on. And just yesterday, they added 2.5 million more records to the 143 million records that are gone. And hey, I always say, go big or go home. And they did. So what are the advantages of ethics? I think ethics can be a competitive advantage. We are in a really unique time right now, right? Companies can have the moral high ground on the federal government. That hasn't happened in a really long time, right? Like, I find it stunning. Like, I literally think, like, Patagonia can save us, right? Apple cares about me. Like, I've just given it all over to corporations because I feel like you have my best interest when clearly no one else does, right? And I don't think that's untrue. You know, I look at what Microsoft did. Microsoft actually went out and said, listen, we want to treat everybody with the same amount of privacy. And so we're going to adhere to the ISO 27018 compliance for Azure. 27018 ISO looks exactly like the EU Privacy Directive. The only difference about being in the United States versus the UK when it comes to working with Microsoft is there's a tiny caveat at the end of that that says, if federal or local law enforcement has a subpoena, we will give it to them. They have to, right? But that's the only caveat. They don't give my things to third parties without asking me first. And it's an opt-in. You know, there's all kinds of stuff they're doing that are really great around privacy. Give me the opportunity to Office 365 or Google Docs. If privacy is important, that's an easy decision to make. Does Microsoft care more about me? I'm going to say maybe. That's terrifying. I know Microsoft's here. It's not like terrifying, but it's terrifying, right? Reputation is even a greater concern in the age of the customer. This is something we talk about at Forrester. The age of the customer is all about this time in business where we're trying to win, retain, and keep our customers, right? So customer-obsessed dramatically heightens the risk concerns. So if you'll see here that if I'm customer-obsessed, USAA, they're one of the companies that I think of. Like anybody you meet from that company who talks to you about kind of what they do or how they work, they'll tell you, you know, the customer is what's most important to us. We care about them. We care about their outcomes. We care about what we're doing for them. We want to be with them forever. You know, they've served our country. We want to make sure that we take care of them. Yeah, we're doing that. They mean it. I have yet to meet a person who doesn't talk like that at USAA. It's amazing. It's amazing. They really are. They live that ethical thing. They live it every day. It's stunning to talk to them, right? And because they care about that, they understand that you have a greater reputational risk if you screw up. If you're not customer obsessed, 16% of you care about that. If you are, 41% care about that. It means something, right? Because you have something to lose. Information security and privacy risk, discrepancy of 14%, CSR and environmental risk 18%, regulatory and compliance risk 15%, and talent and human capital risk 12%. I always laugh at that one because whenever they talk about like HR risk in the 10K, it's always like, don't lay off the senior management because we won't know what we're doing. Like, you don't see one for the rest of us, right? Like, don't let all of our other people go because then the senior management won't know what they're doing. Nope, they only say we can't get rid of the senior management. Love it. Okay, one more thing. What if Coca-Cola had the reputation of Pepsi? Their stock would rise by 3.3% and they would have a $4 billion in market share. It matters. Even if all we're talking about is how much more money you'll make if you have a better reputation, it matters, right? If Colgate had the same reputation as Procter & Gamble, they would make 6.2% on their stock and $2 billion in market share. If CVS had the same reputation as Walgreens, they would actually grow by 6.9 in stock. That would be 3.9 billion. It matters. This stuff matters. Your reputation matters. Your ethics matters. Your compliance matters. It all matters. Yeah, it really does. So if you look at the blue line, these are the worst. Worst would be B of A, Comcast, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, BP, Citigroup, American Airlines, Halliburton, Goldman, and AIG. Woo! Yeah, see that blue line? That's how they compete against the Dow Jones, the NASDAQ, and the S&P 500. This is over the course of 1 year. But if you look at the best, yeah, they do better. The best reputations. Disney, Ford, people like that. One more thing. You guys need money. Like, you guys need tools. You need people. You need to protect the brand Through compliancy efforts, sure, but overall we need to protect the brand. Why does security keep getting all the money? Because they talk about risk, and they talk about FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That's really all you can talk in security. And the funny thing is you're like, if we get breached, oh, it would be horrible. And then you have the executive management say to you, well, we haven't been breached in 10 years. Why would we be breached now? It's like, well, because we haven't been able to update that firewall in 10 years, so I'm pretty sure, we're dead, right? We've probably already been hacked. Fact of the matter is, this is my portfolio. In my portfolio, I have every single company that was breached, 150 million records. Oh, 50 million records or more. Adobe was the most at 150 million records, including source code for their web servers. That was a bad one. So that's a bunch of companies that have breached. So that's Target, TJ Maxx, Heartland, just a bunch of them. I don't have Equifax in there yet. They would drag it down a little bit. But these are all companies that were breached. And you can see over the course of a year, they did better than the market by 20%. Fidelity wanted me to actually give this to them as a fund. Because I beat most of their funds that year, to be honest with you. And I certainly beat the market, right? And that's just companies that have been breached. So for me to say, if your company gets breached, you'll do worse. No. You won't. I wanted to write a paper. It was called Breach Yourself for Better Revenue. My editor told me it was editorially, well, I'll think of what he said to me, but it was really rude. I thought, oh, you're right. But editorially suspicious that I was going to go out and say something that really wasn't true. The fact of the matter is, institutional investors move markets. When the rest of us think, you lost my stuff, and we get out, they look at it as a low buy opportunity and they go right back in and buy it all. So we, as consumers, especially when it comes to damaging your reputation through security breaches, it doesn't exist. Sony's been breached 6 times. Its stock doesn't go down. Mostly because no one cares if an entertainment company gets breached, to be honest with you. And the other thing is, we have no skin in this game. Thanks to the Electronic Funds Transfer Act, I'm not held liable for anything of mine that gets stolen, and the bank has to give it all back to me and replace my card. All the onus is on them. Do I really care if this happens to me once a week? No. Do I really think my social security number is private? No. Do I really think that there's larger problems going on? Sure. Could you open a mortgage in my name with just the stuff that you can get from the internet? Of course you can. It's weird like that, right? We see privacy different, and with that comes a lot of ethical challenges. And I was talking to Patrick just a little while ago, and he said, ethics is just ready for disruption. And I completely agree. And I said, but you're in tandem with a digital disruption. I don't think we can go through the digital disruption that we're in without taking the ethical disruption with us, right? We have to have these conversations. What is it appropriate for Equifax to have? It's an ethical discussion. Is my data mine? Or is it really yours? And as you collect more and more data on me, what's going to happen with that, right? Companies have a lot to think about here. Because as I tell my nephew, who thinks there's nothing, he's 14, he thinks there's nothing wrong with everybody being in all your stuff if you have nothing to hide. And I'm like, well, yeah, okay, but what if your stuff makes it look like you're a serial killer? Well, they could come arrest you now before you get around to killing anyone? That's crazy, right? But that's the kind of, oh, the other thing I saw was if you tend to write in all caps, anything, email, Facebook, any of your social media, if it's in all caps, the banking industry thinks you don't pay your bills. You will get a lower credit rating for it one day. Not yet, but one day. We're going to start looking at behavioral stuff. That's going to decide how much credit you get to get a house. It's going to be really, really weird until ethically we decide what is appropriate for that. And Congress is weird, right? They all went and saw Gattaca. I don't know if they went and saw it together, but clearly a bunch of them went and saw Gattaca. And they came back and gave us GINA, the Genetic Information Non-Disclosure Act. Awesome. You can't use my genetic material to keep me from getting a job. That's awesome. It's a non-discrimination act. It's awesome, right? But they all went and saw Gattaca and thought, wow, that'd be bad. So I'm wondering, are any of them watching Mr. Robot? Because that's terrifying every day, right? They literally, we need to shock the conscience to get this stuff moving. We have not shocked that conscience yet, and I don't know when that might happen. But listen, you as compliancy people, you really do have a lot to think about there. Quality breaches are just as bad. When we talk about breaching trust, remember Lululemon? Like this was the company where, oh man, you would buy their pants and honestly, you would be like, I know my legs don't look this good in real life, but damn, right? And so like, and you would gladly give them like $120, like yes, Lycra, you know, I don't know what we were, but they decided one day like, well, we don't want to spend $110 making them, we want to spend $50 making them, so we're going to take out that second layer of Lycra that made my legs look awesome, and now they look awful, right? And I remember trying on a pair and seemed like, you people are nuts, I'm not buying these, and I put them back on the rack, and I remember the very next day I'm watching their CEO say, it's not our pants, it's your fat legs. All right, well, I'm not going to shop there anymore. Remember Abercrombie and Fitch? Remember we don't want the ugly kids shopping here? Everybody's ugly at 13. It's what it means to be 13, right? And your parents were ugly at 13, and now they think he's picking on them. I mean, 13-year-olds don't pay for their own clothes. Their parents, who were ugly when they were 13, do it. They're not going to pay for their kids to shop there. That's done. Abercrombie still hasn't found its way back yet from the woods, and it always results in a CEO getting fired. Security breaches don't result in that. Trust breaches result in that. And listen, if you breach that trust and you treat your customer that way, and if they have somewhere to go and it's easy to get there, they're leaving you. And they're not coming back. And you have an even bigger problem with millennials. Millennials expect corporations to take a political point of view. They expect CEOs to stand up for marginalized people. They expect that to happen. And even IBM, Big Blue, the company that can barely move from one side to the other without taking 20 years, right? They have decided that DACA is something they really do care about. And so they're rounding up all of those kids who today work in IBM, and they're taking them to Capitol Hill. Because they thought taking a lobbying firm isn't going to quite paint the picture that we need to paint. We're taking our employees and we're telling them we don't want to be without them. How dare you take them from us? They are important and we want to keep them here. Here is how they're contributing to the United States. IBM is taking its employees to visit Congress. What happened? Companies became very political in this climate. And you can be very political in this climate. People expect Apple to stand up for their privacy. I now expect, Microsoft to maintain that 27018 compliance. I almost expect everybody else to get it too, because I feel like that's the right way to work. We have a chance to put ethics at the center of what we do, and uniquely, this is a time where we can market that, manage that, and make it part of our brand. I work with a paper company. They make paper plates. Paper plates. Something as innocuous as paper plates. Like, I use a paper plate, toss it. And honestly, I lost my blue bin I think someone stole it. I keep looking for someone in my neighborhood to have 2 recycle bins because I don't have one anymore. So I go put my recycle bins in everybody else's stuff. I just go out in the middle of the night. I'm hell-bent on recycling, though. I'm really going to do it. But a paper company who sold that kind of thing wanted to be able to prove their sustainability. They're an organic paper company. They say, use our product, and you'll know it was farmed sustainably. Like, how do you prove that? I'm an auditor. How do you prove that? He said, well, we manage the supply chain from beginning to end. From the time that seed is planted until the time it's harvested and made into paper, they can take a lot and say, it came from that acre. And we know that farmers using sustainability practices because we made them as a third party, actually certify to that. There's all kinds of certifications you can do for that. So they do it, and then they say we only work with those farmers. And that's how we can prove this cup came from that tree. And that's how good they want to be at it. This cup came from that tree. Because sustainability is what that company is all about. And they'll put any amount of money into that to prove it to their customers, to prove it to third parties, to prove it to regulators, to prove it to anybody they have to. So who do you trust more with the environment? Some paper company, or again, Scott Pruitt? This stuff really matters. So as you're sitting here and you're in this conference and you're listening to the rest of this, right? I want you to remember you have an opportunity, and it's an opportunity to put the brand first and say the brand is ethical, but you have to behave that way. Remember, it has to overlap. That's why, quite frankly, Monsanto never has to worry about it, I guess. But you do have to pay attention to that. It has to matter, right? And if you are an ethical company, Now is the time to say it. Now is the time to stand up for those ethics. We are now at a point where companies have the moral high ground on the federal government. You're doing better at managing your customers, getting your customers, servicing them, retaining them. You're better at it than the federal government might ever be. You have the same data they do, you just use it better, right? So use it ethically and use it better. And if I have my way, I swear to you, your data will be your own one day. If it is the last thing I do, you will have to tell Equifax, no, you can't have it. Right? Because those are my ethics. Your data is yours. It doesn't belong to Facebook. It doesn't belong to anybody else. It's yours, right? So as we look at that and we look forward and what can we do for our customers, remember the data. You know, they think it's creepy that you collect all that stuff. They think it's creepy how you use it. There are ways to make them feel good about what they provide you and what you're providing them in that service. Think about that stuff, because how they think about you matters, and those millennials expect it of you. I swear, if Tim Cook wouldn't have stood up and said, I'm gay and I don't believe that this is the right thing to do, this is not okay with me. Taking away gay marriage is not something we should consider. He stood up and said that. And an intensely private man stood up and said that because it was the right thing to do. And he said it as the CEO of the biggest company in the United States. Not as Tim Cook, regular guy, but the CEO. IBM laid it down. We're not letting our DACA people go, right? There is a chance for you to be activists. And millennials expect your CEO to be that way. And if Patrick's in here, seriously, Patrick, don't. You're fine the way you are. I promise you, you're fine the way you are. No, thank you. Don't gin it up anymore. You're just fine. I didn't know he was back there, to be honest with you. At any rate, I just want to leave you with that idea, right? You have a chance to make a difference. You have a chance to be part of a conversation, and you can do that with ethics, and you can do that with compliance. And my two audit guys, seriously, come find me. We have to, winter's coming, remember, right? All right, you guys, thank you very much.